So I've heard you talk about Ethereum, and you just kind of spoke to this a little bit and how it lacks an obvious or clear political philosophy. Um, can you maybe speak about why you think that is?
Yeah, so I think this is actually like my fundamental interest. So every person I think has a question that they obsess over, or like maybe not. Sorry, every academic is like this. Normal people don't have a question they obsess over all the time like this, but academics they usually have something which drives them. And my question is very simple, and in a way, it's supposed to be a little bit alarming. Like I'm using it in a way where when I'm giving talks or giving presentations, I'll try to lead with it to shock people a little bit. And the question is like, what is Ethereum for? Because nobody knows what Ethereum is for, and to me, that's a sort of fascinating thing that you can wind a lot of questions and discussions around. So if you look at Bitcoin, and I would have started as a Bitcoin researcher, right? So all my articles up until I don't know 2017, maybe 2018, are on Bitcoin, and I was effectively a today of the calling yourself a Bitcoiner today now has a lot of connotations, right? People think you're a maximalist and all that kind of thing. But I would have been effectively a Bitcoiner in the pre-maximalist, normal-ish sort of way. And when you were a Bitcoiner, you knew what the politics were. So you know that Bitcoin is Lana Schwartz. She's an academic. She says that Bitcoin is a theory of society. So it's a theory about the collapse of the fiat society. So the fiat currency will collapse, and that this will lead into hyper Bitcoinization, or the transition into the Bitcoin economy. Now, hyper Bitcoinization didn't really exist as a term then, but you didn't really even need to say it, right? So it's just the idea that Bitcoin will essentially displace the fiat currencies, which are you're also throwing shade on them and saying that they're effectively worthless or they're paradoxical or contradictory. Um, so Bitcoin's politics were relatively well known. You also knew the kinds of things that informed Bitcoin. So you knew that there's a story that Bitcoiners can tell each other about the Immaculate Conception. So Nakamoto coming in, he appeals to the cypherpunks. He writes to the cypherpunk mailing list. We know that these are digital privacy activists. They engage in a big infrastructural project. The infrastructural project, a collective collaborative effort to build a digital cash with anonymity properties, which eventually we discover, okay, maybe it's not as anonymous, but that was the belief at the time. So there was a feeling that what you were constructing was a genuine, what today they would call a public good, right? So you were building a public good, except it was wasn't in maybe the Gitcoin sense, but that is what you were thinking. And then on the other side of it, you had this idea of crypto anarchy or crypto anarchism. So cypherpunk, I think, if Bitcoin had been purely a cypherpunk project, right, it was just appealing to other open source digital privacy enthusiasts, I don't think it would have taken off. I think it's the fact that it also has this other community which comes in. They blend as a hybrid, and then that seems to pollinate into something special. I think that's the mix. I think you need this crypto anarchist influx, and the crypto anarchists are just the libertarians, right? It's that Austrian economics, deflationary gold, scarcity, all that. We all have come to know and love by through Bitcoin. But one of the first things about one of the first formative experiences of learning about Bitcoin is learning about the libertarian economics, basically. And then those two together, they both have a healthy disrespect for centralization. So you know that decentralization is a core principle. You know that censorship resistance is important, and you also have this belief in what in the academic literature is called algorithmic authority. So this is the idea that instead of trusting in people, you trust in the code, right? You trust in the fact that you trust in like the network plus the blockchain plus proof of work, and you disintermediate any kind of human corrupt influence. So you have a huge backstory, you have a history, you have a lore, and you have an end game as well. So your end game is clear, and your enemies are clear. You know who you're opposed to. You know who your adversaries are. And in a way, that's sort of become a bad thing because now Bitcoin has morphed, I would say, too far in that direction. Like it's essentially mutated into so much of an us against them that everybody is an enemy. So even the adjacent community, their neighbors in crypto, are seen as like just as bad as the Federal Reserve, which I think is just way too over the top. And then if you look at the founding of Ethereum, which is not something people discuss as much, right? So people don't talk about Ethereum's beginnings or the history, the lore in the same kind of way. Effectively, what happens is we tell the story through the story of Vitalik, right? We use Vitalik as this cipher for a tech innovation genius type story, where he is a Bitcoin magazine contributor. He writes these kind of early nice Bitcoin kind of articles. Then he's in the mix with a group of people who were at the time were called Bitcoin 2.0. So this is Mastercoin, colored coins, name coins, a lot of forgotten projects that your viewers won't have any interest in. But all of them were trying to do. All of them were looking at the blockchain and saying the same thing, which is Bitcoin only does one thing and one thing well, which allows you to send and receive a unit of account called Bitcoin. Can we do something more interesting, like what maybe like ENS today, or DAOs or DeFi, all the projects that we eventually discovered? These were the people trying to figure it out. Vitalik looked at all the options and he said, well, all of them fail in their own way. So if you look at the white paper, you can see him sort of deconstructing all the different options. Okay, so now we're going to have a general purpose computer. So the definition of Ethereum in the white paper is effectively like a general purpose computer for or a platform for decentralized applications. And that's a way different, type of story, right? There's no like transition beyond Ethereum to some political state, or replacing the economy with some sort of Ethereum type of economy. Instead, you're talking about something closer to a tech innovation project. He improved upon the blockchain concept and added in interesting things. So neutral infrastructure, the neutral infrastructure sort of narrative then is the closest thing you get. In DevCon, the early talks at DevCon, you can see people talking around this problem a little bit. So Gavin Wood, who a co-founder of Ethereum, then founds Polkadot later on, he has a talk, and this is where I got this question. His talk is, now that we've built it, what is it for, right? So now that we've built it, like, what is Ethereum? And he's searching around, so he's giving an introduction to Ethereum, and also, like, during the talk, basically asking the audience, like, well, not asking them, but you can see this sort of question in his head, like, what have we done? And then he says, he gives us the world computer image, more or less there. So that's where that comes from. So we have the world computer, and then it has lots of generic, sort of properties, but again, it's very tech oriented. So it's only over the next couple of years, I think that was okay. So the idea of a neutral world computer that you could build dApps on was fine. But then when the first wave of ICOs came, so when we saw that actually the main use case for Ethereum was simply to create more tokens and speculative financial frenzies, and this is what got mainstream attention, that's when people start asking, actually, really, what is Ethereum for? Like, is it to, like, as the Bitcoiners are now starting to say, simply to create more tokens in this, like, sort of Ponzi game? So the question takes on a new meaning, and then Vitalik starts getting an interest in things like radical markets. Glenn Vile, he engages with those philosophies. Quadratic funding, that's where that comes from. But that's as far as he goes. What he gets into is always so the criticism I have of Vitalik is he will typically retreat into technical solutions to like hard political problems. So every time, like, somebody tries to broach what would, let's say, a society built on Ethereum principles look like, he'll usually then sort of move back into, well, we'll create like new experimental governance methods. Like it will go into something like quadratic voting, quadratic funding, or Georgian land taxes, real esoteric kind of things. So so to me, it's sort of fascinating that it's not really clear. I do think that there are different groups that are pushing toward it. So the solar punks, I think, are trying to stake their claim of Ethereum should be this regenerative public goods platform. Griff Green, I think it's Griff Green who gives this talk where he talks about what we should do is we should create public goods that are so good they embarrass the state. Like, we'll fix the potholes, the government will look bad, and then the only thing that the government will have left are the bad stuff, right? The prisons and so on. So people will go against it. So that's one answer. I think that's a pretty good answer. The lunar punks could be another answer, right? We should turn Ethereum into essentially this like a ZK sync, zero knowledge proof privacy platform, and so on. And then my own personal view is I think what Ethereum already has, this idea of being a neutral platform. I think it would just help to really give it a bit more of a name, give it a bit more of a sense of what the society would look like. So I put forward in the past mutualist minarchism. So it's a mutualist project of trying to allow for the creation of public goods, collaborative public goods, but then it's pretty hands off about how people live beyond that point. So just trying to put a little bit of flesh onto, instead of saying something like, general purpose computer or, a platform for dApps, we begin expanding it and saying, well, in society, actually Ethereum would be a form of mutualist minarchism, or could be. So sometimes in recent talks, in fact, in relationship to Balaji and the network state, Vitalik has talked a little bit about the idea of Ethereum as a substrate for communities. And I think that could be a fruitful benefit. So, yeah, so I don't think I have any clear answers for it. I just think it's a really fascinating question, like what Ethereum is for. And it's sort of amusing, I think, that we don't. I think it should be more of a center to the conversation than, say, scaling all the time, or, scaling for what?